Get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the entire planet. It has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading off the grid. 3 stories for you today. The big one is an urgent Bigfoot Sasquatch announcement. Got a really interesting supernatural story for you that piggybacks off of yesterday evening's stories, if you were watching. Has to do with butterflies. And thirdly, a story about the most terrifying creature of all, mankind. You can hear the thunder. Hope we don't get rained out. It's been thundering for more than an hour, but it hasn't rained yet, so I thought, well, I'm just going to go up there and make the video. Okay, so urgent Bigfoot Sasquatch announcement. It's kind of similar to an announcement we made about 2 months ago. Excuse me. My wife just made homemade donuts, and I ate like way too many with some coffee after my wonderful afternoon nap. So, excuse me. I have a contact in Colorado that may or may not be the same person that led me to Colorado a couple of years ago and led me to a specific location in Colorado where we filmed some footage where we clearly captured it on camera. And you guys probably saw that video. If not, go back and watch it. It's when the family and I took that 3-week-long trip out to the Grand Canyon and back. But it might be that contact. But this person told me that the water levels nationwide are getting dangerously low because of this heat wave we're having. And so the Bigfoot Sasquatches are getting even closer to civilization, and they're intermingling with humans more so because they're coming off the hills and mountains for the water. So keep your guard up, because there hasn't been more sightings this year than any year yet, but there's been more sightings in urban areas so far this year over any year yet, and it's because they're coming in for the water. So watch out for that. Number 1. Story number 2. This is incredible. This is one of those things that you can't make up. One of those things like Mark Twain says, or said, he's no longer with us. It's why fiction is harder to write than nonfiction, because fiction has to at least make sense, right? So yesterday I came up here and I read some stories on the channel. The second story from our follower Charlie in England had to do with an experience he had in a haunted mansion from the 14th century that pertained to butterflies. He was seeing these sulfur yellow butterflies in the winter, even when there was snow. And he was talking about the legend of how some people believe in England, and probably through much of Europe centuries ago, they believed that butterflies were the spirits of the deceased, and that if you were being followed by a butterfly was landing on you, it was the spirit of one of your ancestors. And of course, most folks would now consider something like this superstition. And I mentioned, after I read Charlie's wonderful story that he sent us, that, my wife's Filipina. She's from the Philippines, and part of that will be in the third story as well. They have that same belief. It's part of their local urban legend superstition that when you see a butterfly, it's the soul or the spirit of somebody who you love who's recently deceased. And I told my story about how when we were over there this past winter, because we spent almost 5 months over there this winter, how we went to 3 different places in our first week there, and there was a butterfly that by the time I got to the end of my long-winded story, we really came to understand may have been the same butterfly that was following Dearly's mother, my wife's mother, around, a mother-in-law. And Dearly had a sister 3 years ago who died while giving birth. And so we're at our first location. It was like a tourist trip that my sister-in-law, Mary Jane, took us on. She owns her own travel company. Very successful young girl, 28 years old, never finished college in the Philippines because she couldn't finish because she ran out of money. You can't get loans over there like over here. It's just different. Listen, you get outside of America, or Western civilization, you don't have the money to pay for stuff, you don't get it. There's none of this, oh yeah, you can go into debt for life for it. So anyway, but as a college dropout, she went on to start her own travel agency. She's harnessed social media to pull in her customers, And she makes more money than most Americans, a lot more, like 10 to 15 grand a month, US dollars consistently, which is literally a fortune over there, where the dollar's worth 57 of their pesos, the local currency. Very proud of her. Very proud of her. She's proof that anybody who wants to succeed and be affluent can be. She doesn't use the excuse, well, I'm from the Philippines, I'm in the Philippines, you know, one of 12 kids, grew up poor, didn't finish college, didn't have anybody to help me, didn't know it. Nope. She's like, nope, I don't want to be poor anymore. So she worked her butt off. And at 29, she's making a killing. She owns 3 real estate properties. I just saw lightning, so I better get on with it. But she took us to 3 locations that were at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes apart from each other in a van. Yet this, what appeared to be the same butterfly, was with my mother-in-law as we took all the tours of all 3 locations. The final one, of course, being the motel where we would stay there on the beach, the hotel. And she kept saying it was her daughter, Connie, dearly sister, that passed away. So I told that story yesterday after reading Charlie's story about the butterflies. Now, here's what you don't know. I made that video just before dark, around the same time of day. I had enough time down there just before it was dark to make one more reel for Instagram. By the way, in only 2 weeks, we started an Instagram account 2 weeks ago. In 2 weeks, we've got 6,000 followers. The name of the Instagram account is Sick Twisted Humor, just like our Facebook page, Sick Twisted Humor. So thank you for all of you who've gone there to support us on Instagram, who support us here and who support us on Facebook. So anyway, I'm down there in the field, racing daylight, or racing against darkness, to make this 1 minute long joke that I put on the Instagram. And I hit record and I start recording this video, and this butterfly, and I never mentioned it, but while I was telling my story about the butterfly experience in the Philippines, I was seeing the butterfly in my mind, and I should have told you what it looked like. It was like very dark brown, not quite black, but very dark brown, and it had red circles all over it, and they were colored or outlined in a lighter shade of brown. So it was like dark brown wings, light brown circles, orange circles in the light brown. I've never seen a butterfly like that in this country, here in the U.S., where I am now. So I'm recording this video, and about 10 seconds into this reel, this black butterfly with orange circles with a light brown ring around those circles flapped like right above my phone and then flew off. And I couldn't speak. I had to reshoot the video. I couldn't speak. I was like, OMG, that's the butterfly that was in the Philippines that I just told the story about, and now it's here in central Virginia. And I looked as it flew away, and I couldn't see it. Couldn't see where it went. And was it because it was so dark it blended in with the darkness? Was it because I waited too long in my shock and awe to look back and it was already gone? 3, am I bat crap crazy and insane? It was a hallucination. We can never rule that out. They call me Crazy Lake, probably for good reason. Or 4, if it's something that came here from the spirit world, from the other side of the veil, did it simply slip back into the other side of the veil? Wow. So isn't that a crazy story? All right. Here's the third story. No rain yet, but I don't want to get struck by lightning either. Has to do with the most terrifying creature on the planet. Okay, we've discussed Bigfoot, Sasquatch. We got the cryptids done. We've discussed the paranormal, supernatural with the butterflies. Now it's time to talk about monsters. Human beings. All right. I had this big aha just a few days ago. And I thought it through. And I talked to my beautiful bride dearly, a.k.a. Giggly Girl, about it, and I ran my theory by her. And she heard me out, she listened. And she usually says, no, you're just crazy. But this time she says, yeah, I think that makes some sense. So here's the deal. Have you ever known someone, and you got to do a lot of dissecting here. This is like psychology here. Have you ever known someone who, for some reason, just didn't want to take your word on things? In regard to things you had experiences with, but they didn't. Even though you had experiences with them, they discount everything you'd say. Now, if so, now listen, that's not uncommon if you're dealing with a devil's advocate. You know, those are people, I can't stand devil's advocate. If I determine somebody's a devil advocate, I will minimize, I just won't be around them. because they're just always going to disagree with you. And it's not because they do actually disagree with you. It's because that's what devil's advocates do. I feel sorry for these people because they don't even really know where they stand, let alone anyone else, because it's their ultimate life goal to just disagree with what everybody says. So even if somebody says something that they would agree with, they put in the yeah buts, and then start rabbit holing. So I stay away from those people. It's a waste of time. I'd rather read a book, rather stare at the sun than talk to a devil's advocate. Okay, so that's number one. But then secondly, and of course there's the know-it-all, smartest guy in the room, who just knows a little bit more about everything than you. But somebody who's not a devil's advocate or a know-it-all. But it's like you meet somebody, you're talking, everything seems okay, but then they kind of like pretty much say to you, you don't really know what you're talking about, or you must be confused. And I'll give you some examples. So, I've met so many people since moving back to the Charlottesville, Virginia area. Been back for 8 years now. That's how long I lived here the first time before leaving and going overseas and the West Coast and Asia and all this stuff, Middle East. And everybody I know now is different than the people I knew before. I went back to see some of my old friends, and there was like, okay, why did I ever hang out with these people? So I made new friends, mostly because of our son and his school experiences and all this stuff. But there's only a few people I've gotten to know really well. So I'm talking about a person who I would see occasionally. And years ago, early in our meeting, for get-togethers, if we would see each other at a social event, it's a woman. She asked just a couple of kind of like, probing questions, like, a lot of times they'll ask, you go to UVA, or they'll ask if you went to the university. And I learned early on, you don't say which one, because by God, in Charlottesville, there's only one. It's Mr. Jefferson's University, right? So I would say, well, yeah, but not UVA. I went to wherever in West Virginia. And it's like, oh, West Virginia. Why West Virginia? And I'd say, well, I grew up there. Oh, you're up there. Oh, this your wife. Oh, what's her name? Oh, where's she from? Philippines. Oh, how'd you guys meet? Oh, well, I was in the Philippines and met in the Philippines. Oh, okay. So common, typical conversation. And I would see this person with her husband and some of her kids throughout the years. And last fall, before we went to the Philippines, I'm trying to get the story in order because it's important. Yeah, we saw this person. It was a kid thing, at a kid event thing. Our kids were in together. And she's talking about us going to the Philippines for the winter because we had told her. And she looks at me and she says, well, what's it like over there? And listen, I've learned to answer questions from Americans who've never traveled overseas this way. I say, oh, the resorts are wonderful and the beaches are beautiful. Because that's true, and I leave it at that. But a lot of times if I go into some of the detail about exactly how it is in some of these other countries, especially the third world countries, they get like, well, they call me racist. They say, I can't believe you're saying that about a different culture in a different country. It's like they ask questions they can't handle the answers to. So anyway, these kinds of questions would come up. She was like, what's it like just walking down the street over there? What's it like when you go out? And I'd say to her, well, it depends, because it really does. When you're a white foreigner in a non-white third world country, you get a different experience than the locals. You get the different experience from a lot of tourists of color. So I would explain, if I'm out with my wife or anybody in my family, I'm fine. We can go where we want to go, do what we want to do. But if for some reason I just feel like, going out to get some time to myself and I go out in public, I've got to be prepared to be harassed. And of course, I've got to be prepared to, if I stop to buy anything, potentially pay multiple times the market price of whatever it is I'm buying because of the skin tax. So this woman, what do you mean? I'd say, well, when you're a white foreigner in a non-white third world country, a lot of times vendors will double the price, triple the price, and we call that the skin tax. Or if they see you by yourself walking alone, they'll start harassing you. They'll call you, hey Joe, or they'll ask you for money. Try to wave you into the bars to buy beer. They'll often invite you to sit with them if you're in a bar. They say, oh, come sit with us. And 5 or 6 guys there. And then when the bill comes, it goes to you. And if you're like, wait a minute, I didn't agree to pay this bill. The other guys will say, we don't have any money. They'll tell the server in the restaurant, or we don't have any money. He's got to pay. And you pay or you go to jail. It's just how it is, okay? So I'm saying these things, and this woman's like, now I'm sure it's really not that way, with that southern accent. I'm sure it's really not like that there. I'm sure that's just how you envisioned it. People probably just can't understand you. And everybody over there speaks English. I mean, better than me. I am from West Virginia. And so, ching, going to catch hell for that one. But it's like this woman, it's like anything I said, it's like, well, that can't be. Well, that can't be. And I'd say, ask my wife. And so she'd say, is that true? And my wife would say, unfortunately, yeah, it is. You really have to understand our culture as a foreigner when you go there to know what you might deal with. And she said it is safer just to stay with your Filipino wife, or if you have a friend and that's why you're there. Okay, well, the woman accepted that. And so for the longest time, I thought it was because she viewed my wife as an authoritarian on the subject matter because she's a Filipina from the Philippines. And at one point, because the woman asked me if I'd ever been, well, she knew I'd met, and she asked if I stayed longer than like a week or two. And I was like, well, of course I did. I lived there for 6 years. Actually, all my time combined now is closer to 8 years that I've spent over there. But still, she wouldn't take my word on any of it. I must have been disillusioned. So, but my wife she considered an authority. So we go over there for the winter, come back 5 months later, and it took a while, but in time, I ran into this woman. And so she comes up to me and she says, oh my God, Kevin, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? And she goes, like, while you were gone this winter, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw you on Sick Twisted Humor, and I saw all your jokes, and I saw that you had over 250,000 followers. And I said to my son, did you know Daniel's dad does this? And he's like, oh yeah, go look at his YouTube. She goes, you've got like over 1 million people on the internet that watch you. I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a social media content creator. She's like, I never knew that. I would have never thought that. I said, well, yeah, I'm a little old to be in the game. She goes, no, it's not that. She's like, I knew you were from West Virginia, and I know you'd gone to the Philippines to find a wife, and that's all I really knew about you. So my mind was just blown to see that you have such a large online following. And I was like, okay. Well, anyway, we went our separate ways, and it occurred to me later. The reason she discredited everything I ever said before any meeting before this, time out, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we saw her a couple weeks after that, okay, and we small talked again. She goes, oh, by the way, I didn't get to ask you about your winter in the Philippines. How'd that go? So I started telling her, and she's, hanging on every word, And she's like, what about some of those awful experiences? Did you have any more of those? I said, well, just a couple, but they were minimal, and I minimized them because I understand the culture, I speak the language, and I knew how to exit the situation before things got too bad. But yeah, I had taxi drivers try to tell me their meter didn't work. I had drivers, if I knew it was a 500 pesos ride, they'd try to tell me it was 2,000, so I just refused to get in the taxi. I'd hand a taxi driver a 500 pesos bill for a 120 pesos ride, and he would claim he didn't have change. So expecting me as a white foreigner, who were all rich Americans, by the way, which is the mindset of a lot of folks there, would just say, oh, it's okay, just keep the change. Even though I saw his ashtray full of change. Yeah, I had all those experiences, but I kept them minimized. And she's like, oh, well, that's good. That's good. You understand the culture. She kept them minimal. So then I left. Again, and this is where I had the aha moment. The reason she always discredited everything before knowledge of who I am and what I do, it's because she thought I was just a dumb hillbilly from West Virginia, somebody who couldn't get an American wife, so I went off to some third world country to do it. So basically, she judged me. She had judged me. And she'd sized me up, and she'd found me wanting. So anything I said that she didn't know about, even though I had experiences with that and she didn't, well, that just couldn't be if it went against what she thought might be so, because I'm beneath her. But once I guess she rejudged me after she saw the success I have on social media, and she probably found out I write books and all that stuff too. Well, she decided to give me more respect, a higher level of respect, and so now, whatever I say, it's worthy of being considered as probably accurate or worthy of being taken seriously. So here's the funny thing. Saw her again 2 days ago. She was with her husband. I think she's from Michigan and he's from Oklahoma. So we were talking, and I said to her, now, did you go to Oklahoma to get a husband? Now I looked at him and I said, or did you go to Michigan to get a wife? And they looked at me like that was the craziest question they've ever heard in the world. They said, who in the heck goes anywhere to get a spouse? I said, yeah, that's what I thought too. And they didn't get it. It went right over their head. But she probably forgets having said that. All she knew is that I was from West Virginia and that I'd gone to the Philippines to get a wife. I didn't go there to get a wife. I went there on vacation, and I met this beautiful young girl after I'd been there almost a month, ready to come home, who now, 15 years later, is my best friend, the mother of my child, and my wife. My wingless butterfly. So I hope you enjoyed these stories. Watch out if you're out there hiking, you're around a water source. Be looking around, getting your six, looking out for Bigfoot Sasquatch, him, her, it, or they. The next time you're approached by a butterfly, especially if you're going through grief, you've recently experienced a loss, might be more than a butterfly. And man, people, let's just say the older I get, the more I understand why Bigfoot Sasquatch prefers to be left the hell alone. See you for more next time from the most awesomest homesteading channel on the internet that doesn't have a daggone thing to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid.